Hi friends, I'm Douglas Kruger, professional speaker and business author. I'm at the Rand show today at the Joburg Design Week Authors Day, and it's a new addition to what they do every year. The idea is we're getting together a small select group of people who are interested in the world of writing and publishing. Now, my particular contribution, I'm speaking about what happens after you've published the book. As an entrepreneur, how do you use your book to position yourself as an industry expert and become recognized as a top icon?
Ladies and gentlemen, Douglas Kruger.
Thank you so much. Folks, I'm going to do something a little strange, then I'm going to explain it to you. I need to clap twice. Bear with me. Ole! The ole was gratuitous. If you are an aspiring expert, you'll know that video content is incredibly useful. And it's fairly easy these days to get fairly good high-end video quality from the iPhones and the Samsungs and so on. But the real challenge is getting good audio. And a while back, I jumped onto YouTube and I found a simple little hack. And what you do is you keep your old phone. Then you get yourself a really inexpensive little lapel and you film the audio using your old phone. Drop it into your pocket. Then to line it up afterwards, all you do is you do a little clap and you can watch on the graph and line up the little peaks. And that helps. It's incredibly good. It changes things from, you know, the initial sound is like Sam Cowan in the bathroom with the door open. And it goes from that to being like Sam Cowan at the 702 Studios. So simple little hack then, it works incredibly well. Today we're talking about something beyond the idea of simply writing a book. And that is how to position yourself as an industry expert. And this goes above and beyond the writing process, and it looks at what you can do with the book to become an icon in your industry after the fact. And I'd like you to imagine yourself, let's say 3, maybe 4 years from today. You've come to a meeting very much like this one, and you've chatted with a group of people, your peers, your colleagues, and you walk out back to the car parking lot, but something dramatic has changed in your life. Because this time, when you reach the parking lot, you take out of your pocket the keys to the brand new, top-of-the-range Aston Martin. And you press the button, and this thing lights up like the Starship Enterprise. You open the door, and expensive air escapes onto the pavement. And you've arrived with your supermodel boyfriend, girlfriend, who slinks down into the seat next to you, and you say, you know, darling, please close the door, you're letting the poverty in. And as you pull out onto the street, you think about what's changed in your life, because it's not just the wealth, not just the material things. There are other things that have changed as well. You found that the media has started coming to you. You've also found that the deals have started coming to you. And when people talk about your world, your industry, and they spend money into it, your name is the first one that springs to mind. And above and beyond that, you also have the satisfaction of being a coach and a mentor and teaching and training people within that industry. And you trace it all back to this idea of the desire to position yourself as an industry expert. Because regardless of the world that you're in, whatever it is that you're passionate about or you do for a living, there are always 1 or 2 names that rise to the top and become preeminent. Let me show you how powerful this is. Without any kind of manners, I'm just going to put up an industry or a sphere of life on the screen. Shout out the first name that springs to mind when you hear bodybuilding. Arnold Schwarzenegger. The catchphrases? I'll be back. Hasta la vista, baby. Come with me if you want to live. Or more recently, vote for me if you want to live. Arnold Schwarzenegger. Now, isn't that interesting? His was the name that sprung instantly to mind for all of us, and it's like that anywhere in the world. This guy has won the Mr. Olympia contest 7 times, and that's an incredible achievement. But did you know that there are 2 men who have each won the Mr. Olympia contest 8 times? They outperformed this guy. And not only that, but the last time that he performed on a professional level in the world of bodybuilding was in the year 1980. There are people in this room who were born after he stopped and who still think of him as the top name in bodybuilding. That's incredible. So what's going on there? What if I give you horror writer? Stephen King. First novel that I ever read, I was 9 years old. I snuck it by my parents and it was Misery. My friends say that explains a lot about why I am the way I am today. Stephen King, one of his novels a while back was written under his pseudonym. Now, he's written under 2 names. His actual name is Stephen King, and his pseudonym was Richard Bachman. And at one stage, he released a book under the Bachman pseudonym titled The Long Walk. Anyone read it? It's classic, creepy Stephen King. It's very good. It'll stay in your dreams for weeks afterwards. The interesting thing is, it flopped in the US when it first came out. In US standards, it sold 24,000 copies. Really good by South African standards, but a dismal failure in the US. Now, a few years down the line, something interesting happened. Stephen King fans read the book and they outed this Richard Bachman. They said, he sounds an awful lot like our Stephen King. And Stephen King describes Richard Bachman as dying of cancer of the pseudonym. And what they then did was they re-released the same book under the name Stephen King. And in less time, it sold 250,000 copies. Same book, same product, same market, same man. The only difference was the equity of the name, was the fact that it said Stephen King on the cover. Car show. Now, I don't want a car show, I want a human being. Jeremy Clarkson, yes, the best car show in the world, until he punched his producer in the face. Jeremy Clarkson is an interesting study in this idea of expert positioning. Because when you think about it, he had the same raw material with which to work as every other motoring journalist on earth. What has he got? He's got the new cars that come out every week. And yet this man wasn't out earning his contemporaries on a scale of, say, 2 to 1, or even 10 to 1. It was closer to 100 to 1. Folks, what would it change in your world if you were able to add an extra 0 or an extra 2 zeros to your annual income? And I do mean on the right-hand side. What would that change in your world? Experts earn exponentially more for doing effectively the same work, and it's the equity of the name. And take the simplest example. If you're an unknown speaker or consultant, you go into a business in Johannesburg and you spend a month tinkering with the guts, the mechanism of that business, and you hand in your invoice and it has X number of zeros on the end. The next week, Richard Branson drops by and they add 3 more zeros. And he speaks for 45 minutes in front of their staff. And it's got nothing to do with how hard he worked. It's the fact that he is Richard Branson. What if I give you this one? No name, no industry. Who's that? Did you recognize her by her cherries? Nigella Lawson. My wife and I are huge fans of this show for vastly different reasons. Now, Nigella is something of a Clarkson when you think about it. What does she have to work with? It's food. How many millions, how many billions of people on the planet, to a greater or lesser extent, know how to cook and prepare food? So then we have to ask the question, is it her level of technical qualification that sets her apart? Do you think Nigella Lawson is one of the world's top 10 most qualified chefs? Do you think she's one of the world's top 100 most qualified chefs? Then why is she out-earning all of them combined? That's what we're interested in here today. And how can we harness this idea of positioning yourself as the top name expert in your industry by design? So I believe that there are 3 things that go into creating an expert. And the first one is the most obvious, and it's the one we immediately think of when we hear the term. But it's also insufficient to become legendary within an industry. It's the one on the left-hand side, and that represents, what do you think? Knowledge. You've got to have the knowledge to be a high-level practitioner, to be an expert in your industry. It is necessary, but insufficient. To become an expert on the order of a Schwarzenegger in bodybuilding, Branson in business, Nigella in the world of food, or Clarkson of cars, you have to add the other 2 ingredients. And this is one that we don't often talk about, but they're incredibly important. The top one is personality, and the last one is publicity. Knowledge, personality, publicity. Put those 3 together and you have the underpinnings to become an icon in whatever world you are involved in. Take one out and you disqualify yourself as an industry expert. If you have all the knowledge in the world but no personality, the best you will ever be seen as is a specialist. If you have all the personality but no knowledge, the best you will ever be seen as is a Kardashian. So my own journey into the world of writing was a bit of an unusual one. I always knew that I wanted to write, and I started off very early reading Stephen King, and I got into the James Michener books, which are these sort of 1,000 and 2,000 page tomes where he starts at some place like Tel Aviv in Israel or in South Africa, and he starts at the dawn of time and works his way all the way up to modern day, and I loved the written word. I always have. So when I got to high school level, my parents said, well, go and do a typing class. And I didn't really think this one through, because 13 years of age, the first day you walk into Mrs. Holmes' typing class, room 204, right in the corner next to the staircase, I realized for the first time that I was the only guy. Now at 13, you look around and you go, I'm the only boy in typing class. By 14, you look around and you go, I'm the only boy in typing class. But I managed to get my word count, my words per minute, up to something like 85 to 90 words per minute, which means that I can write almost as fast as I can think. And that's made a huge difference to me. I write a book on average, I publish a book on average once a year, but I can write them a lot quicker than that. My own process is to write a book of about, say, 50 to 70,000 words. It usually takes me around 2 months. And that's 2 months of frenzied activity. I'll usually write 2,000 to 3,000 words a day, sometimes much more. And my process is fairly simple. I'll have an idea for a book percolating in my mind over time. And then I'll make notes on my phone as I go along. And it hits you at the strangest times. It's usually when you're doing something that doesn't take a lot of concentration. Hard work, but low think. So you might be on the treadmill at gym, or it might be in the shower making love to your spouse, whatever the case might be. You grab your phone, and you just jot down the thing that you were thinking about. And I end up with these bullet points of ideas I want to include in my book. I will then start writing the book. I don't believe in a long planning process. I research and write at the same time. So I'll have this kind of core skeleton of ideas for the book that I start fleshing out at the same time that I'm reading all of the leading titles on that topic or on that subject. And I've also found an incredibly handy little thing, and perhaps you've tried this too. I downloaded the Audible app. Is anyone else using that at the moment? Okay, it's life-changing. Audible.com, download the free app. You then pay for any books that you want to listen to. And you can find anything on there. If you're a Stephen King fan, you can listen to Stephen King reading the novel. I've always been a voracious reader, but that tripled my literary intake, and it's absolutely delightful. I listen to Audible books wherever I go. So that's my writing process. I started off with my first non-fiction book because of 3 words from a mentor. I'd started out in the speaking industry. I joined Toastmasters and I managed to do well in a couple of their competitions, and then I transitioned into the professional speaking world. And I lacked credibility because I was a very young speaker presenting to business audiences. And all I had was the fact that I could speak. I didn't have any business background and so forth. And I went to one of my agents and I said, what can I do to build credibility? What's the number one thing I can do to really make a name for myself and get some traction? And she said, with a straight face, and I think some degree of hyperbole, she said, Doug, write a book and your audiences will perceive you as one step down from God. Yeah? I've written 5 books and we'll let the history books decide. It may have been hyperbole, but there was a kernel of truth in what she was saying. Books give you an immense amount of credibility. My first one was very simple. It was just a book on public speaking, which was what I knew. Since then, having been speaking and interacting with the business world for some years, I've gotten into more entrepreneurial concepts and ideas around wealth generation, innovation, and so on and so forth. But that was my starting point. And it's interesting how much books can open doors for you. It changes your perceived level of credibility. If you want to speak, present, or coach on any topic matter and you have a book behind your name, suddenly you're for real. And the interesting thing is it doesn't matter if it's a very good book or not. It's the fact that you've written a book. Now, of course, I'd say bring your A game and write the best book that you possibly can. But the fact that you have a book behind your name makes the world of difference. I've done both the professional publishing route and the self-publishing route. A quick overview of the way that I went about it was this. My first book was accepted by a publisher in Cape Town who put almost 0 work into marketing or publishing it. We had no relationship whatsoever. The book sold reasonably well, not extraordinarily well, but it kind of came out, hit the shelves, sold a few, and they weren't interested in a second copy. What I then did was I regained the rights to that book, and I then self-published it. I then wrote a second one, which I self-published as well, and then after that, I offered that book to Penguin, who then accepted it, an upgraded and revised edition of. And I've been with Penguin ever since now. We've done 5 books together, and we've been releasing one on average every year. Last year was a bit of an unusual one. They actually allowed me to release 2 books within a calendar year. And that was an anomaly. And their reason for it was this. I had come to them at the beginning of the year with a proposal for 3 different titles that I could write. And one of them was a book on wealth. It was titled, Is Your Thinking Keeping You Poor? 50 Ways the Rich Think Differently. And they didn't choose that one. In fact, they went for one called How to Make Your Point Without PowerPoint. I wrote that one, we got that published at the beginning of the year, and then later on into the year, they came back and they said, look, we've got an opening for a financial book, for something on wealth or prosperity. Could you get it done in time? And I wrote that book within a 1-month period because I had to. And it's amazing how much you can churn out if the pressure is on. And I actually like a deadline for that reason. So last year was a bit of an anomaly, and then the next book came out in January of this year, which effectively meant that in a 7 to 8 month period, I had 3 books come out. Highly unusual. It doesn't suit their marketing purposes. They prefer 1 per year. So today I'd like to look at 7 different ways that you can position yourself as an expert after you've written the book. I'm making the assumption here that you've turned your dream project into a book. You've either self-published or it's out there on the shelves via some professional publisher, and you're now looking for a little bit more leeway and a bit more traction. What can you practically do to position yourself as an expert in your industry based upon your published book? Well, the first one is really just a shift in mindset, which says that nobody volunteers you as a thought leader in your industry. You have to volunteer yourself. And that's kind of a scary proposition, because initially we look at ourselves and we say, well, who am I? Who am I to be seen as an expert or a teacher, a guide or a guru in any industry? And I like to kind of lower the bar on this one with the following idea, which is that if you know a little bit more than the people around you, you can teach. You don't necessarily have to be coaching and teaching high-level CEOs or specialists in any field. If you know a little bit more about public speaking than the people around you, you can teach them how to do that. So being a thought leader is really about volunteering yourself for that position, for saying, I want to be an expert in this area and I want to be seen by design as a top name in this field. Nobody comes to you and says, you have now qualified. You actually have to do that one yourself. And the second idea is that you have to champion a lifestyle or a cause. Nigella Lawson, when you see her interviewed, she talks about in her early career, she looked at this kind of dream idea that she had of the Italian domestic goddess. Her exact words, she said something about that just captured her imagination, and she wanted to be that. She wanted to be the head of a tribe of followers that loved that lifestyle. And if you ever watch her show, you can see it in everything that she does. It's the tone, the style that comes through. And after studying this idea of how to be seen as an expert in your industry for a number of years, I think that that intangible thing is more important than we've initially realized. We really put a lot of emphasis on the knowledge and the technical qualifications. I don't believe that humans follow other humans because they have a varsity degree. I believe that humans follow other humans because we have this gut feel, instinctual reaction where we look at someone and we say, I want to be like that. And there's just something about the human being that appeals to us. It's the brashness of the Clarkson, or it's the sexy sizzle of the Nigella, something about the human that we want to emulate. And there's something quite profound about that, because as a business model, if you want to become an expert, it means you've got to be something that others want to be. Now, I don't believe that that means changing your personality. I simply think that that means representing something that people look at and say, that's a kind of lifestyle, that's a way of being that somehow speaks to me. Whatever that might be, whether you're the Elon Musk of the tech world, the Nigella Lawson of this world, or the Schwarzenegger of bodybuilding. It's the personality aspect once again, and that makes the world of difference. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be just a lifestyle. It could also be a cause. Does anyone know who, well, you know who that is. Again, in the same world as Nigella Lawson, his first book was called, can you remember? The Naked Chef, yes. And he described his style of cooking as naked. And he sold tens of thousands of copies of this book around the world. People bought them, opened the cover, were sorely disappointed, but continued following him anyway. Now, this is an example of another person within Nigella's realm who is also a well-known, iconic, top-of-mind expert name. But this is not a brash personality. This is not a loud human being like a Clarkson. He's very much of a down-to-earth bloke. But he does champion causes. You'll see him hosting shows where he's doing things like recommending healthy foods for tuck shops or prisons or hotels or whatever the case might be. And he is championing a change in the world. And I think that's one of the fundamental differences between people who simply have a job versus people who are perceived as an industry leader. These are people who are not just doing a thing every day. It's not just the bullet points of their job description. These are people who are actually championing a change in the world. Now let's just take that idea for a second and think about your industry and your world. If you had to step outside of the idea of doing bullet points per day and ask yourself, what's the change that I want to enact in the world? You can identify a cause with that. And that cause does all sorts of interesting things for you. It changes how people look at you. It gives you excuses for media coverage. It gets you out there into the public eye. Suddenly you go from a smose who sells something to the leader of a tribe of believing followers. Let me show you how powerful that is with a little thought exercise. I'd like you to picture a large group of people. In your mind's eye, just a mass of human beings. But now this group represents your followers and your target market for the rest of your working life. So be generous with yourself and picture a massive crowd of people. Let's put them out in the sun. Now, everywhere that you have a large crowd of people, you're going to have two levels of entrepreneur interacting with this group. Let's start with the low-level entrepreneur. In my mind's eye, for no reason that I can explain, I picture a pie man selling pies to this crowd. And I don't know why, but I always see this guy wearing medieval dress. He's got kind of a Robin Hood suit going on, the green outfit, the little hat, maybe a little feather, and he has straps over his shoulders, and he's carrying a tray with this pile of steaming pies. And what he's doing is he's tapping people on the shoulder one by one. And as they turn around, he says, "Would you like to buy a pie?" Because of the sheer numbers of people, from time to time, one person says yes. They hand over some coins, and he hands over a pie. And it doesn't matter how good or how bad his pies are, it's the numbers. So, to make another coin, he has to tap another shoulder and sell another pie. And if he goes home, his business model has come to an end. No more coins. Every coin he earns requires another tap on another shoulder. You don't want to be the pie man in your industry. So what's the alternative? Well, in your mind's eye, look over the heads of the crowd, and in the distance, you'll see a hillside. And halfway up the hillside, you have the guru. And the guru is the person that they have all assembled to listen to. Not because they believe that the guru is selling anything, but because this is a human being who has a different energy, a light in the eyes, and ideas and thoughts about how their lives can be better. And the guru is giving away this information for free. He or she is creating these tribes of believing followers, and they come to the guru. That's who you want to be. You don't want to be the pie man having to go to them. You want to be the guru and have them come to you. And you do that by championing a lifestyle that they want to emulate, or by championing a cause that they believe in. Here's another guy who's done that incredibly well. Anyone know who that is? Micro, yeah, absolutely. He was the host of a show called Dirty Jobs. And this one was quite an interesting story. He just had this idea one day where he said, you know what would make a great show for like the CNNs or the Discoveries of the world? Is if you had to go and look at all the messy backwater stuff that makes America work. Men and women getting their hands dirty, slopping muck for pigs and getting into the machinery behind the scenes, all of the dirty jobs that make America work. And he proposed the show to the Discovery Channel. They said, we love it, you be the presenter. And that actually caught him by surprise. And after a few years of doing the show, which was a runaway success story, he discovered that by accident, he had become the leader of a new cause. In the States, very much like in South Africa, there are thousands of varsity students who are looking around for jobs and not finding them. And these are very highly qualified young men and women who are particularly looking to get into the sexy corporate world and wear a suit. And he was saying, of the people that he's worked with, he finds that some of the wealthiest and happiest people are the men and women who do these dirty jobs. And then he put some numbers together, and he pointed out how many millions of dirty jobs are going begging in the States today. And he accidentally became the spokesperson for this cause. And it was something that he almost stumbled onto by accident, but it has made him world famous. So again, I'm going to ask you, in your industry, the question is not what do you do every day? The question is what's the cause that you could champion? What could make you the head of a tribe of believing followers? Amateurs have jobs, but experts have a cause. These guys are particularly good at it as well, Dove. When you think about the problem that they sit with, what do Dove sell? I mean, they sell soap. And they sell soap in various forms. It's like liquid soap, bars of soap, but they sell soap. That's what they do for a living. How do you find a cause in the world of soap retail? And they did, and it was absolutely genius. Have you ever watched any of the online videos or perhaps seen the TV ads for this Real Beauty campaign? Some of them are so incredibly touching and so tear-inducing that people willingly share them among themselves and propagate their advertising. Now that's a best case scenario for a brand or for your business, where people so believe in the story you're telling and in your narrative that you're no longer selling a thing. You are championing a cause, and it changes things. Third thing, and this is a bit of a tricky one, so watch carefully. For experts, appearance is everything, so appear. So here's what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that it matters that your shoes come from somewhere in Italy, that your outfit was made in France, or that you drive a car made in Germany. What I'm saying is that in every industry there are forums, and you must be seen in these forums. When young men and women get into the world of work for the first time, they'll sometimes hear advice like, find out who the key players are in the industry. Make sure you know who the big names are. I think that's good advice. But I think we can go one step further. I say, make sure that the big names in every industry or in your industry know who you are. And that's the art of expert positioning. It's becoming a face and a name and a voice by design. And this means going beyond just being an email address. You have to be seen in public, you have to be heard in the media, and you have to become a part of the public consciousness. And that is incredibly powerful. It is so powerful that it changes the scale of your earning for the same task as someone who is less well known than you are. It changes everything. The scary part about this, of course, is it means that you're going to have to speak in public. Anyone here enjoy public speaking? The two Toastmasters over there and our guest speakers, brilliant. Yeah. Most people, there's that old joke that says, you run surveys and they ask people, what is your number one fear? And consistently, death comes second. And what that teaches us is that at your average funeral, most people would rather be the guy in the box than the one delivering the eulogy. But it is incredibly powerful to stand up in front of a group of people and deliver ideas. This is pie man versus guru. If you go to a networking event and you have to tap people on the shoulder one by one and hand out business cards, explain who you are, you're the pie man. But if you come and stand at the front of the room and you champion causes, share free content, lead with your ideas and your insights and your entertainment like the Clarksons of the world, instantly you become the guru. And in one go, everyone knows who you are. But the trick is you have to volunteer yourself for that. And there's an interesting little balancing act that goes on here. At first, you have to go to the media, you have to go to the event planners, and you have to volunteer yourself. But after a while, the balance switches and it starts coming to you. Do it well enough and long enough, loud enough and often enough, and eventually the media starts coming to you for your insights. The event planners say, well, we've got this event on this topic, that's the person we should speak to, and they rope you in because you are the logical choice. But the first step is yours, you've got to go first. So, experts know that appearance is everything, and so they appear. And that also means, like I say, volunteering yourself for things like media interviews. I wonder if that's part of your business plan at the moment. If it's not, I'd like to strongly encourage you to start targeting media organizations and outlets for interviews and articles. I try and write articles all of the time, and it's amazing how you can leverage a small article into a radio interview, into a television interview, and so on. And it begins with the simplest of things, the courage to try. You've got to actually submit something to a publisher or to a program manager and say, would you like a little bit of insight on this content? And they're going to give you a yes or a no. But you will be surprised at how often you get a yes, because the media choose through content. And if you can take good ideas and make them entertaining, make them come alive for people, they will have you on their shows and they will feature your articles and insights. The highest level challenge I ever set for myself was I asked, could I get an article into Forbes? And I actually managed to get that right once. I've yet to get a second article into Forbes, but I did do it. And now in my little office at home, and my office is very humble, there are like dogs sleeping next to my slippers and my coffee cup and so on the wall is a framed picture of the Forbes article. But radio interviews are actually relatively easy. For myself, I've now been in the speaking and presenting industry for probably about 14, 15 years. I would say it's unusual for me to have an entire week go by where I don't do at least 2 radio interviews. I do them often, and it's not that hard to get into them. And you saw the way that Sam presented earlier on today. It's this art of taking ideas and wrapping them in stories, entertainment, humor, heartbreak, the mix of emotions and psychology. I mean, that was absolutely genius. Radio stations thrive on that, and obviously that's something she does incredibly well. You can do it too. What are your best insights into your world, your industry? Now that can mean things like lessons you've learned about how to get into the industry for real amateur operators who are trying to get in. Or it can mean the very high-level stuff where you see where your industry is going and you disapprove, you've got better ideas about how it can go forward. What if you had to condense that into 3 bullet points and tell it through the medium of stories? The best human communication is really make a point, tell a story. Make another point, tell another story. And if you can get humor and emotion into that, so much the better. I like Clarkson's way of speaking in metaphors and anything that makes an idea come alive. And I think that's another one of the things that distinguishes experts in any industry. It's not enough just to have the knowledge, to have the ideas. You have to make it come alive for your target market. One year at the BBC Awards show, Clarkson and Top Gear win the award for Best Factual Documentary. Clarkson walks up to the front, accepts his trophy, scratches his head and says, well, thanks very much for this, but we haven't used a fact in our show in the last 5 years. And it's true, when you think about the way that they present, they speak in stories and metaphors. They speak in word pictures and ways of seeing things, and that made the world of difference. And some of them were quite colorful as well. Your average motoring journalist might say something like, most supercars are heavy and hard to manage, but this one is light and agile. Clarkson's take on that is, your average supercar is like wrestling an elephant up a loft, but this one is like rubbing honey into Keira Knightley. Now, you're never going to forget that visual. And that's the art of making a thing come alive in the audience's mind, and it is incredibly powerful. The broadcasters and the publishing houses love that sort of thing. If you can give away good content for free and make it come alive, they will have you back. Now, generating interviews. How do you generate interviews? Well, it takes us on to the next one, which is very much what I've just said. Give away your best ideas for free. Whenever you talk about thought leadership, this dynamic comes up because it's an interesting and tricky one. My IP, my intellectual property, is what I sell. My ideas, my intangible assets, are what I make a living off. Should I give it away for free? Heart and soul, my answer to that is yes, and do it all the time, do it often, do it relentlessly. Because what I've discovered is this: I charge to present in front of corporate audiences. That's my main source of income. Every single idea that I have is available for free on my website in the form of an article or a video or whatever the case might be. Now, you would think that that would be dangerous to your business model. It isn't. What happens is they see that you have the kind of ideas that they want and they come to you for the implementation. If you are not giving away your ideas for free, you are hiding your very best marketing. Give it away for free, they come to you for the implementation, and it genuinely does work that way. But once again, as with the idea of volunteering yourself as a thought leader, you go first. The industry doesn't come to you and say, would you? You go first and you volunteer it. My best-selling book so far is one of the ones that came out last year. I mentioned, Is Your Thinking Keeping You Poor? 50 Ways the Rich Think Differently. And I did something a little bizarre with that one, and I didn't tell Penguin about it until after it was done. I gave it away for free. I took all of the chapters and I made them available as articles on my website free of charge. Now, the thinking in terms of that one was twofold. On the one hand, there really was a bit of an altruistic thing there that said, I think poverty is a ridiculous problem. To my mind, it blows my mind that we have people like Elon Musk who are trying to make us an interplanetary species at the same time as we have people all around us who can't feed their families at night. That bothers me. And the answers are available and they are cleverly hidden in books. And the last stat that came out from Exclusive Books said less than 1% of South Africans go into bookstores and buy books. Now, folks, I think that's heartbreaking. You know, when the answers are out there, but they are unknown. So for that reason, I made the entire book available. It's my own thoughts on overcoming poverty, plus all of the best titles that have been proven to work over the years, condensed down into an easy-to-read package. So on the one hand, I gave away the content for free, and every day, day by day, I released a chapter free of charge, put it up on my website. Now, on the other hand, the bizarre result of that is that that's my best-selling book. Isn't that insane? And that's the way that it works. People will read a chapter, read another chapter, and go, I want it, and go buy the book. Okay? It just seems to work that way. I'm also doing something else that has, again, this weird balance of kind of altruism on one side and commercial viability on the other, where I'm doing an event on that speech. A big event around this idea, is your thinking keeping you poor? And I never get to do that presentation for corporates. Part of the reason for that is I tell audiences the number one way to get rich is to quit your job and become your own boss, and weirdly, corporates don't like it. So I never get to do that talk, and I think it's one of my best. And again, I want to get that information out there. So I'm going to be hosting this event where we want to get 1,500, 2,000 young entrepreneurial people from disadvantaged backgrounds into that room and give it away for free. We're even trying to get the book sponsored so that every delegate can walk away with a book for free. At the same time, I mean, what a marketing and PR event. You know, it certainly is going to work in your favor. We are less interested in the world of expert positioning with every element of sale than we are with total raised profile. It's worth it to give away your best ideas for free. Help people, coach them, mentor them, and suddenly what happens is people go, oh, that's the guy that you should speak to. That's the woman you should have on your show. You're having an event. There's no one else but that person. They are the name that is synonymous with your world. And that's what we're after here. Idea number 6, social media. I believe in telling an ever-unfolding story, and I think this works incredibly well. It certainly has for me. Now, the most obvious thing you can do on social media is things like the tweets and the memes, the little posters, and you put them up, and hopefully if they're really good or they capture something, people share them. But there's a lot more that you can do as well. I'm working with a young lady at the moment who's trying to get into the world of vegan lifestyle. And she's written this beautiful book, and she's taken these incredibly beautiful photographs, and she has started filming video content as well. But what I've noticed, and I've been trying to coach her around this, is she's incredibly hesitant to self-promote. Now, that is devastating in the world of expert positioning. You've got to be shameless. But there are ways of being shameless without being arrogant. And one of them is to tell an ever-unfolding story. So let's say, for example, that you get a radio interview. This is Ashraf Garda on SAFM. And he very kindly has me back from time to time, and we talk about entrepreneurial concepts. You could tweet or update your Facebook status once and say, I'm going to be on the radio today at this time. Or you could get 10 different instances of publicity about the same thing by telling an unfolding story. And it goes like this. The day before, you post something saying, tune in tomorrow and check me out on this show. I'm going to be talking about, and you describe audience benefit. Here's what you'll get out of listening to it. Or you say something enticing like, I'm going to talk about the never before explained, whatever the case might be. And then the next morning, you post a photo of you getting dressed in the morning and saying, trying to make myself look smart for Ashraf. Then after that, it's on the way to the SAFM studios. Then you check in at the SAFM studios. And then you take a photo of yourself in studio live talking to Ashraf. And then after that, you take a photo of the book that you're shamelessly promoting while you're talking to Ashraf. And then you say, hey Ashraf, do you want to pose with me for a photo? And then you tweet it at SAFM, at Ashraf Garda, at his cause, which is Real Champions SA, and so on and so forth. Then what you do is, having cleverly recorded the interview, you upload it to YouTube with some brilliant visuals, and then you upload the entire thing and you promote it across all of your social media platforms, and on and on and on. Then put it on your website as well. So what you want to do is you want to tell this unfolding story about everything that you do and maximize the amount of PR that you get out of it. Now, the trick to this one as well is it actually shouldn't be totally self-focused. It should really be about what the audience gets out of it. And again, if you're doing it cleverly, that's why people like Ashraf will have you back on the show. Because when you're there, you're not talking about yourself. You're talking about things that their listening audience or their reading audience can gain from. 5 ways to, 4 mistakes that you can avoid in order to, whatever the case might be. And you generate content that helps people. That's the way to do it. Once again, you wrap it up in your stories with the humor and something a little bit touching, and that makes the world of difference. Number 7. This is an abstract one, but I think it's an incredibly powerful one. Own a recognizable framework. Folks, presumably, not many people in this room speak that language. But what book is that? Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Now, how interesting is that? Without the language, we know what book we're looking at because the framework is incredibly powerful. It's become recognized. Robert Kiyosaki wrote this book a while ago, and since then, everything he has done has been based around that framework of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He's written over 40 books since then, and it's all about the way my rich dad did this, Rich Dad's ways of investing, Rich Dad for teens, Poor Dad's look at, and on and on and on. And there is power in this framework. People know Rich Dad, Poor Dad better than they know the name Robert Kiyosaki, and that's okay. That's incredibly powerful. A couple of other examples of frameworks you might know: the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, very well known. The 1-Minute Manager, Chicken Soup for the Soul, quite a clever framework, that one. One of the best sellers of all time in nonfiction. This could have been called something really limp, like, nice stories to make you feel better. But Chicken Soup for the Soul, I mean, that's brilliant, and it's become a recognizable framework. Foxes and Hedgehogs, anyone know who that is? Clem Sunter, yeah, there you go, absolutely. And think about the complexity there. Clem Sunter is this high-level thought leader who talks about how the movement of politics and power all around the world is shaping your future. But to simplify it and to be recognizable, he divides everyone, everything, all companies, all governments, all nations into foxes or hedgehogs. And we know him for that framework. He uses it in his books, in his speeches, in his coaching, and so on. The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, The Naked Chef, and so on and so forth. And you can use frameworks for a number of very clever things. The first one is that you can use it to access a market. Did anyone here ever watch a show on Travel Channel called Skinny Dip? And please don't leave me as the only pervert with my hand up. Okay. So, the premise of the show is exactly what the title suggests. These 3 beautiful young ladies from, I think it was from Canada, would go to different watering holes around the world, whether it's a beach or a lake, whatever the case might be. And they would gather up some of the locals, and in this half-hour show, they would trek to this watering hole, and right at the end, they would take off all of their clothes and run into the water. Now, it's a family-friendly show, so what actually happens is you have 29.5 minutes of them trekking to the water hole, and then you get to the last 30 seconds, and as the titles begin to roll, they take off their clothes, run into the water, and the show is over. Now, I'm not saying that I PVR'd the entire half hour just to get the last 30 seconds. But what is interesting about that show is that none of these presenters had prior credentials. They had no degrees, no qualifications in journalism, and no prior travel experience. They sold this show to an internationally syndicated house based on the strength of the framework alone. They walked in there and they said, we have this idea for a crazy show called Skinny Dip. And that novelty was enough to get them onto a globally syndicated show. What clever frameworks could get you media access? What could you title your book that is so intriguing, that becomes so recognizable, that people go, we've got to hear more about that. It just sounds so cool. There are more things you can do with your frameworks. The next one is you can use them to keep on speaking to a market. Now, I've mentioned this idea of an ever-unfolding narrative. I don't believe in one instance of PR. I believe in continually talking to your tribes of followers and continually positioning yourself as an expert. I mentioned earlier on that Schwarzenegger had won the Mr. Olympia 7 times. And I said there are 2 guys who have done it 8 times. That's one of them. His name is Ronnie Coleman. I would just call him Sir. Ronnie Coleman used to appear quite regularly on the cover of magazines like Muscle and Fitness and Flex and so on. And these magazines have an interesting problem on their hands. For the last 50, 60 years, they've had to bring out 200 pages every month, high gloss, full color pages, on the art of picking up and putting down heavy stuff. Now, how do you fill 250 pages with that kind of content month after month after month? And the answer, and it's a very clever one, is they use frameworks to keep on talking to their audience. Homework for you. Go and pick up a copy of Muscle and Fitness or Flex magazine. You will flip to the first article, and it will say something like, the Marine workout. And it says there, if you think you're as tough as a US Marine, try these exercises. And if you're a 24-year-old guy walking through CNA or exclusive books, you look at that and you go, I gotta try that, I have to buy this magazine. Then you flip another 10 pages and you come to something called the 10-ton workout. And the premise is, in 1 hour at gym, collectively and accumulatively, you're gonna lift and move 10 tons worth of weight. And if you're a 24-year-old, you look at that and you go, I gotta try that. But if you're paying attention, you'll notice that the exercises are exactly the same as the Marine workout. Shh. Now, you flip another 10 pages and you come to the Russian Olympian workout. Are you as tough as the Russian Olympians? They give you all the exercises. You look at that and you go, ooh, I've got to have that. And the exercises are exactly the same as the 10-ton workout and the US Marine workout. All they're doing is they are cleverly rearranging their content using brilliant frameworks. And it works over and over and over. If in your world and in your industry and in your book, you only have one message, you have at least 10 different frameworks that you can offer to the media, that you can offer as speeches, and that you can offer as memes, tweets, articles, and so on. You just cleverly repackage the content in different ways. Another thing to remember is it doesn't matter if you get sick of your own material, because you are marketing to a moving parade. All we're after here is the end result. That's the guy to talk to. That strong association that makes you synonymous with that world. You find ways to keep generating content. You can also use your frameworks to speak, train, consult, and perhaps be a brand representative. So that framework becoming famous makes you famous, and that's what we're after. A final what if. I'm a part of an association called the Professional Speakers Association of Southern Africa, and we're affiliated to a group in the States called the NSA, National Speakers Association. And every month we get these interesting audio magazines from the US, and they interview different speakers and authors and experts in their industry about how they've become successful. And they interviewed one guy who had self-published books, and he decided on this very simple idea. He thought, I'm going to do 3 things every day to make sure that I sell more books. And his 3 things a day ensured that here and there he'd sell an extra 10 or an extra 50 copies, except for one day, where one email that he sent got him into the Chinese market. And as a result of that, in less than 6 months, he earned over $2 million US. 3 things per day to ensure that you sell books. And one of them just might be the jackpot. If you challenged yourself to do that, what could you possibly do? Would it mean writing articles? Would it mean sending out emails to people? Would it mean speaking at events and getting your brand out there? Whatever the case might be, it's about relentlessly putting that message out into the public sphere. You share good content and you share entertainment. Knowledge, personality, publicity. Take it on a roadshow. Do it long enough and loud enough and often enough, and eventually people say, you know who you should talk to about that? And your name appears at the end of that sentence. Thanks so much.